Hey guys, tonight we step back in time to a sleepy afternoon inside a 17th-century French perfume workshop. Imagine a tiny room tucked away in a bustling Parisian alley, thick with a heady mix of roses, spices, and something faintly medicinal, like a hospital waiting room but classier. You probably won't survive this without sneezing at least once, or suddenly craving a vintage candle that smells vaguely like powdered musk and wildflowers. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'm curious. Drop your location and local time in the comments so I know who's sneaking in a history nap with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down a narrow cobblestone street where the sun hangs lazily in the sky, making shadows stretch like slow cats. The faint sound of horse hooves clatters in the distance. But here, this alley smells different. It's not just the usual city stench of smoke and garbage. No, this is a mix of something floral, something earthy, and something you can't quite name, but it sticks to your skin like a secret. You push open a heavy wooden door with wrought iron hinges that creak softly, and the workshop welcomes you like a warm, fragrant cave. Inside, the air is dense with scents layered so thick you can almost see them: rose petals crushed to a pulp, sharp citrus oils, rich amber, and a hint of something herbal, almost medicinal. Your nose twitches involuntarily. This is no ordinary place. It's a temple of scent, and you're about to become its reluctant apprentice. The room is small, maybe 15 feet by 20, with wooden beams blackened by years of candle smoke. Shelves bow under glass bottles filled with colorful liquids, dried herbs, and mysterious powders in tiny jars. There's a faint shimmer of oil slicks on the stone floor from past experiments, and a delicate golden light filters through a small window. Dust motes dancing like tiny fairies. You notice tools everywhere: tiny glass pipettes, copper distillation pots, porcelain mortar and pestle stained with years of crushed blooms. On a rough-hewn table, a heavy book lies open, filled with handwritten notes and sketches of flowers and animals you barely recognize. This is the world of perfume in 17th century France, a world where smell is power, and a single drop can sway a king. Historians still argue whether these workshops were more about art or early science. Were these perfumers just fancy flower arrangers, or did they secretly dabble in what we'd now call chemistry? The truth is probably both. What you're witnessing is an alchemy of senses and skills that would eventually blossom into the modern perfume industry. As you lean closer to inhale the scent of freshly crushed rose petals, you realize this place is a mix of the elegant and the odd. For instance, did you know crocodile dung was sometimes used in ancient cosmetics as a fixative? No promises you'll find that here, but the past is definitely stranger than you think. Smell is memory's twin, and in this workshop, every breath you take pulls you deeper into a story centuries old. Now, before you start daydreaming about your next overpriced candle purchase, settle in. There's a lot more in store as you dive further into the master perfumer's world. The day stretches on, and the workshop waits. You stay in the workshop, your eyes adjusting to the dim amber glow cast by flickering beeswax candles, their flames dancing softly like curious fireflies trapped indoors. And there, standing behind the cluttered table, is the master perfumer himself, a man whose reputation precedes him like a well-tailored cloak. His hands are delicate but weathered, stained faintly with the residues of petals and oils. A craftsman who shapes invisible worlds from nature's most elusive gifts. You watch as he works with focused calm, blending drops with an artist's precision and a scientist's curiosity. The master's face is a roadmap of years spent crouched over glass vials and fragrant powders. His eyes, sharp yet kind, catch your gaze briefly, as if measuring your potential or perhaps warning you. This craft is not for the faint-hearted or the impatient. In a world ruled by volatile politics and fragile alliances, his creations serve more than vanity. They are symbols of status and subtle power. You learn that these master perfumers often serve kings and nobles, their fragrances whispered about in royal courts, secrets passed from one delicate bottle to another. Perfume is a weapon as much as a luxury. A scent might court a lover's favor or disguise a political agenda. Historians still argue whether these artisans were true innovators or simply skilled preservers of age-old recipes. But no one disputes their influence on both fashion and diplomacy. As the master moves gracefully around the room, he tells stories well. You interpret the silent language of the way he crushes a petal, swirls an oil, and pauses thoughtfully over a formula. You get the feeling that every scent he creates is a chapter in an unwritten book, a blend of myth and memory. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Perfumers sometimes used ambergris, a rare, waxy substance produced in the intestines of sperm whales, to add a deep, musky note to their fragrances. The odd thing, it smells better after being aged and buried for months, so they literally buried whale vomit to make perfume. Your brain just did a tiny flip, didn't it? And while the master never says it outright, you sense the pressure lurking behind his calm demeanor. Competition between perfumers is fierce, their secrets guarded like royal treasures. Techniques passed down through generations are often jealously protected, with some perfumers even accused of espionage in the quest for the perfect scent. You watch as the master dips a tiny brush into a golden vial and touches it to a strip of linen. The fabric instantly releases a delicate bouquet of jasmine, rose, and something slightly wild, an aroma that seems to tell a story of sun-drenched gardens and shadowed woods. You inhale and wonder, what memories might this scent awaken centuries from now? By the window, a small cat slinks through the shadows, its fur catching the light like dark velvet. It pauses, sniffing the air, as if aware of the invisible magic weaving through the workshop. The master smiles briefly at the creature, an unspoken acknowledgement that in this scented world, even the smallest players matter. You realize the workshop is alive, a blend of art, science, and secrecy, humming quietly with stories you can almost touch through scent. The master perfumer is not just a craftsman, he is a guardian of an invisible heritage, his work lingering in the air long after you've left. You sit on a low wooden stool as the master gestures toward a long shelf sagging under the weight of countless jars, bundles, and boxes. It's time to learn the ingredients. And let's be honest, you were probably expecting a garden variety tour of roses and lavender. But no, this is 17th century France, where beauty mingles with the bizarre. He begins simply, pulling down a jar of crushed rose petals, their deep pink hue faded to a dusty maroon. The scent is still sharp though, syrupy and romantic. Roses were the superstars of perfume, grown in grass and beyond, plucked in the early morning dew when their oils were most potent. You take a whiff, and it's like inhaling a memory from a dream you never had. You think, okay, that makes sense, but then he brings down a second jar. It's grayish, lumpy, and smells like something that definitely died, then decided to stick around for fun. Musk, he tells you with a shrug. Not synthetic, nope, real musk, extracted from the scent gland of the male musk deer. Back in the day, that little critter paid the ultimate price for smelling slightly irresistible. Today, it's rare and often replaced, but in this world, it's still considered pure gold. Your stomach does a hesitant loop, but he's not done. He opens a third jar, filled with golden brown pebbles that look like hardened caramel chunks. You lean in. It's ambergris, the famous whale treasure. Sperm whale intestinal secretion that's aged at sea and collected when it washes up on shore. It smells shockingly good, sweet, earthy, oceanic, and worth more than gold by weight. You're not sure whether to be amazed or vaguely disturbed, but honestly, that describes most of history. Now for the fringe. He hands you a small pouch that smells faintly of burnt herbs and you think cold cheese. You blink, it's civet paste, derived from the glandular secretions of the African civet cat. Collected, brace yourself from its backside. Yep, that happened. Still used sparingly as a fixative, it deepens floral notes and adds a strange animalistic warmth. Delightful, if you don't think too hard about the source. Historians still argue whether early perfumers genuinely understood the chemistry of these ingredients. You hear yourself mumble aloud. Or were they just winging it with trial, error, and enthusiasm? The answer, probably both, but somehow, despite the cat butts and whale guts, they created fragrances that captivated kings and queens. That's alchemy for you. Still, not everything is gross. The master lights a small censer filled with dried lavender, cloves, and orris root, a sweet, violet-like powder ground from the iris plant's roots. The scent is lovely, powdery, spiced, vaguely warm. Orris root takes 3 to 5 years to age properly before it smells this good, which is oddly reassuring in a fast-paced world like yours. Another jar reveals frankincense, hard golden nuggets that crumble into perfume smoke when tossed on coal. Imported from the East, these resins had religious and royal uses, carried along the same trade routes that brought silk, tea, and trouble. And over there, bergamot, an unassuming little citrus fruit whose peel became the backbone of countless classic perfumes. You're surprised to learn how something so simple smelling can have such rich historical clout. And then, the oddest bottle yet. You lift the glass stopper and recoil. Rotten fruit, mold, leather. The master chuckles softly. It's castoreum, from beaver scent glands. Used for leathery, smoky base notes. That's right, beavers. France's fur trade wasn't just about hats. It contributed directly to how nobles smelled at parties. You look around, and suddenly, the entire workshop feels different, less like a quaint apothecary and more like a carefully curated scent zoo. Each ingredient has a story. Some grew in sun-drenched fields. Others were scraped from animals. Some were smuggled across borders. Perfume, you realize, isn't just about smelling good, it's about capturing something fleeting and taming it in a bottle. You notice that the master keeps a locked cabinet. He doesn't say what's inside, but you catch a glimpse of tiny phials, each labeled in faded Latin. Rare extracts, maybe poisonous. You suspect that even in the world of perfume, some secrets are too potent to share. Still, there's something quietly thrilling about the variety: florals and foulness, earth and spice, sweet and sinister. Each ingredient is a brushstroke, and together they form something far bigger than the sum of their parts. It's not about masking scent, it's about storytelling through the nose. And as the afternoon stretches on, you realize the air has changed. It smells richer now, deeper, more complex. Almost like the workshop is inhaling and exhaling with you. The master motions for you to follow him into the smaller back room of the workshop, a space even more dimly lit, where the smells are sharper, almost medicinal. This is where the magic or the mischief really happens. Copper stills glisten faintly in the candlelight, some tall and slender, others squat like little kettles. You've seen chemistry sets before, maybe even known one as a kid. But this looks like what would happen if a wizard designed a coffee machine. He begins to tinker with one of the alembics, pouring a mixture of rose petals and water into the spherical belly of the contraption. The liquid bubbles softly as a small flame licks beneath it, and a thin coil of vapor begins to rise. This, you learn, is distillation, the ancient and surprisingly complex process of extracting essential oils through heat. It's simple in theory. Heat the fragrant stuff, catch the steam, cool it, collect the essence, but as with most historical things, the devil's in the inconsistent temperature control. Some historians argue that these early perfumers were more like alchemists than scientists, with their murky recipes, obscure symbols, and a generous helping of wishful thinking. Others insist that perfumery was one of the unsung precursors of modern chemistry, and honestly, they both have a point. You watch the master adjust a small copper pipe with the tenderness of a surgeon. This isn't just bubbling pots, it's precision, intuition, and a little bit of hope. You reach for a nearby book. Its leather binding cracked from decades of handling. Inside are handwritten notes, part recipe, part riddle. One reads, 3 parts water of orange flower, 1 pinch of angelica. Let sit under moonlight before mixing. Another says, do not inhale directly from still unless you're fond of headaches and visions. Great. Perfume making apparently doubles as a potential psychedelic trip. On a side table sits a small bowl filled with a dark, resinous mass that smells like pine needles and incense. The master explains, slabdinum, derived from the sticky resin of the rockrose plant. In ancient times, it was collected from the beards of goats that grazed on the bushes. Yes, you heard that right. People used to comb perfume ingredients out of goat beards. You take a second to mentally high-five modern sourcing methods. You help load crushed lavender into another alembic while the master prepares the condenser. It takes longer than you expect, and you start to wonder how anything ever got done in the 1600s. Between the painstaking prep, the trial runs, and the cooling time, each batch is an exercise in patience. Still, the reward is real. A clear, sweet-smelling liquid trickles out, collecting drop by precious drop into a tiny vial. You ask him about failures. There must be dozens. He nods slowly, then gestures toward a shelf filled with dusty, unlabeled bottles, experiments. You assume some probably smelled like rotting cabbage. Some might have smelled like genius. One time, he confesses with a laugh, he left a batch of orange flower distillate too close to the fire and it caramelized. The result, a warm, sweet note that accidentally became his bestseller. Burnt perfume, a happy little accident, Bob Ross style. He pulls out another gadget, smaller, shaped like a teardrop, made of glass. A maceration flask. In this one, flowers are soaked in fats and oils, another method to extract scent. And fleurage, it's called, common in this period, especially for delicate flowers like jasmine and tuberose that don't respond well to boiling. You gently swirl a bit of the fat, feeling a little weird about it. It's soft, like lotion, but smells like an entire garden blooming in slow motion. What you start to notice is that perfume is not just scent, it's process. It's about how something is become a raw flower transformed into liquid emotion, a resin turned into memory. You watch, almost hypnotized, as the master collects each essence in tiny bottles labeled in florid script. There's bergamot, neroli, benzoin, and a dozen more that make your tongue trip just trying to pronounce them. And among the clutter, there's always a hint of the mystical. Symbols etched into the side of the alembics. A talisman hanging from the ceiling, maybe for luck, maybe for protection against sulfurous explosions. Historians still debate whether perfumers genuinely believed in the mystical side of their craft, or if they were just hedging their baits. Who wouldn't, when a minor miscalculation could mean fire, poison gas, or a 10-day headache? It's easy to romanticize this place, and you do, for a moment, but then the master shows you his burned fingertips and tells you about the time he inhaled raw tuberose essence too deeply and passed out in his chair. Perfume, it turns out, is not for the fragile. It requires endurance, a strange kind of madness, and the ability to withstand a whole lot of trial and error. Not to mention some highly questionable ingredient origins. As the sun starts to dip outside the narrow window, the master stops his work. He hands you a small bottle filled with what you helped distill: rose, lavender, and a whisper of citrus. You unstopper it and inhale. It smells like a summer day wrapped in silk. Not quite perfect, but something close. And in that moment, surrounded by copper pots and drying petals, you begin to understand. The workshop isn't just a place where perfume is made. It's where nature and fire are tamed, where scent becomes story, and where the boundary between art and science blurs into something utterly intoxicating. The bell above the door jingles a soft, silvery sound that doesn't quite match the heavy, creaking wooden frame it's attached to. You glance over your shoulder just as two figures step into the workshop, bringing with them a swirl of cold air and something else perfumed, but not from this shop. The customers have arrived. They move with purpose. One is cloaked in velvet, the fabric dyed deep wine red, practically screaming, "I have money and opinions." The other is quieter, likely a lady's maid, her hands folded dutifully in front of her and her eyes darting about, assessing everything, including you. She clocks your slightly oil-stained apron and mild state of confusion and gives the faintest nod of understanding. Welcome to customer service, 17th century style. The master doesn't miss a beat. He sweeps forward with the grace of someone who's performed this dance 1,000 times. Polite, almost reverent, but firm. These aren't just shoppers, they're nobility, or close enough. And here's the twist. Perfume isn't just something they want to smell nice, it's their identity, their armor, their status. Bottled. The woman removes her gloves, revealing rings on nearly every finger. She demands a custom blend, of course. Something youthful, not girlish, fresh but lasting, and decidedly unique, yet unmistakably fashionable. Basically, a unicorn in scent form. You try not to laugh. The master just nods solemnly, as if she's asked for something perfectly reasonable, like turning lead into gold. As he begins selecting essences from the shelf, you observe the unspoken ritual. This isn't sales, it's seduction. Every bottle uncorked releases a whisper of possibility. He lets her sniff cardamom, then ylang-ylang, then a touch of violet. Each one brings a subtle shift to her posture. She tilts her head, frowns at the musk, perks up at the orange blossom. It's not just smell, it's emotion, memory, ego. The perfume she chooses today could affect how others treat her, how her lovers respond, how her rivals hiss. Perfume has politics, you learn that quickly. In 17th century France, a person's scent could enter a room before they did. Nobles were known to drench themselves in layers of perfume, not just for elegance, but to mask the stench of, well, everything. Bathing was rare and public hygiene, let's just say, limited, so perfumes had to work overtime, covering sweat, mildew, horse dung, and existential dread. The result, fragrance became both necessity and statement. You hear a story whispered by the lady's maid as she pretends to fuss with her mistress's fan. apparently. A certain duchess wore a custom blend so potent it was banned from church. Another noble supposedly used a concoction so musky, drove away bees and small children. There's even gossip about a courtesan whose perfume was so intoxicating, it allegedly convinced a visiting ambassador to sign a trade deal. Historians still argue whether these tales are apocryphal or based in fact, but what's certain is that perfume was curacy. The master prepares a sample vial for the woman, corking it gently and sealing it with red wax. He offers it without ceremony, and she dabs a bit behind each ear. Her face goes neutrally evaluating, then, a satisfied smirk. You can almost hear her thinking, yes, this will do. She pays in silver generously and offers a curt nod of approval before sweeping out the door, her new scent trailing like a silk ribbon in her wake. But not all customers are nobility. Shortly after, a young man enters, reeking of leather and horses, a courier, maybe, or a lower merchant's apprentice. He's here for something else. Scented gloves. The master hands you the task. You learn that in this era, gloves were often scented to mask the unpleasant smell of the tanning process, which involved urine, lime, and you guessed it, animal fat. Delightful. You rub a blend of lavender, lemon balm, and clove into a pair of fine kid leather gloves, working the O's into the seams. The result is subtle but pleasant, clean, warm, oddly comforting. He sniffs them, nods gratefully, and drops a single coin into your hand with a sheepish smile. These smaller customers matter too. Some are here to impress, others to disguise. One man buys a blend for funerals, another wants something sweet, but not girly. You hold back the urge to ask what that even means. A particularly memorable visitor arrives just before dusk, a priest, dressed plainly but with the kind of confidence that says he doesn't need velvet to command a room. He requests something for meditation. The master selects frankincense, myrrh, and a drop of vetiver. The result is earthy and sacred, with a smoky, contemplative undertone. The priest breathes it in and closes his eyes. For a second, the world is quiet. That's when it really sinks in. Every person who walks through this door isn't just buying perfume. They're chasing something: power, beauty, peace, even grief. You begin to understand why the master takes this so seriously. Why his hands are steady, his ears always listening, his shelf always perfectly arranged. And why, when the shop closes for the night, he takes a moment to light a stick of sweet-smelling incense, not to mask the room, but to thank it. You stand beside him in silence, the scent rising gently around you like the last sigh of the day.